There is a drawer in a storage facility connected to the Iraq Museum in Baghdad that has not been fully catalogued. It contains clay tablets recovered from Eridu, the oldest city yet excavated on Earth, between 1946 and 1949. Most of them are grain records. One is something else. The language is Sumerian. The date is approximately 2900 BCE. The voice is first person. It describes the act of ending. Near the bottom, pressed into wet clay more than 4,000 years before anyone thought to look for it, one sentence appears. I am the last. What I leave is all there will be. I found the Sumerian King List because I was looking for something else. I had been tracing the astronomical alignments of the oldest known temples, trying to understand whether their precision required prior knowledge of celestial cycles or could be explained by gradual observation. That question kept pulling me deeper into the Sumerian record. The deeper I went, the more the record pushed back. The King List itself is a physical object. It exists on a clay prism now held in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, approximately 12 inches tall, inscribed in cuneiform, and recovered from the ancient city of Nippur before 1900. The list records the names and reign lengths of kings stretching from before the flood to the dynasties of the historical period. Scholars who study it in the morning and teach ancient history in the afternoon treat it as mythology before lunch. But the numbers on that prism are precise, in a way mythology rarely bothers to be. Consider the arithmetic. 8 kings ruled before the flood. Their combined reign spans 241,200 years. The shortest individual reign is 18,600 years. The longest is 43,200 years. These are not round numbers, not the kind of figures a scribe reaches for to suggest great antiquity. They are calculated in the base 60 mathematical system the Sumerians themselves attributed to their teachers, a system so consistent it still governs how we divide hours and degrees of arc today. The list was not written to be believed. It was written to be copied. And somewhere in that act of copying, across 3,000 years of scribal transmission, something was preserved the scribes themselves may no longer have understood. The names of the 7 figures who stood beside those impossibly long-lived kings were preserved. The Apkallu, the sages, one per pre-flood king, described not as advisors or priests but as the origin point of every art the Sumerians possessed. The Babylonian scholar Berossus, writing in Greek around 280 BCE, described them plainly. They taught writing, agriculture, geometry, law, and the observation of the heavens. He did not claim they were human. Before what heavens exactly? That is where Eridu becomes impossible to set aside. The city sits at what was once the Persian Gulf shore, in the southern marshes of modern Iraq, and it is the oldest urban settlement yet identified in Mesopotamia. Excavations between 46 and 49 by Iraqi archaeologists Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd uncovered 18 superimposed temple levels at Eridu, each built directly on top of its predecessor, each one more precisely oriented than the last. The lowest level, the earliest, is a single-room mud brick structure with an offering table and a central hearth, dating to approximately 5,400 BCE. The alignment of that room to astronomical north is accurate to within 1 degree. There is no earlier structure beneath it, no rough draft, no clumsier building where whoever built the first temple was still learning how to build temples. The knowledge that produced it appears to have arrived already complete. Official archaeology explains this as accumulated local knowledge, a society learning over generations to observe the stars and orient their sacred spaces accordingly. This is reasonable, except for one detail. The astronomical alignment does not improve gradually across the 18 temple levels. It is present at the foundation. The Sumerian texts offer a different explanation. In the tradition surrounding Enki, the god of wisdom and the deep, the Emi are described as a set of divine laws governing every aspect of civilized existence: writing, the descent of kingship, the construction of temples, and the arts of the scribe. Enki holds them. Enki distributes them to the first city. The texts do not describe this as metaphor. They describe it as a transfer event, with a location, Eridu, a recipient, the first king, and a source. The texts call the Abizeu the deep, the origin point, whose geography no Sumerian map ever recorded. 7 sages came from there, they taught, and then the texts simply stop accounting for them. The Apkallu are described in ancient texts with a specificity that mythology rarely bothers to achieve. In the Babylonian series known as the Uruk list of kings and sages, a tablet recovered from ancient Uruk and now held in the Staatliche Museum in Berlin, each of the 7 sages is named and assigned to a specific pre-flood king. They are not allegories for wisdom, they are listed like civil servants. Each one is given a title, a king to serve, and a jurisdiction of knowledge. What they are said to have taught is not vague. The base 60 number system, the one used to calculate those 241,200 combined regnal years, is attributed to them in the tradition. So is the 360-day administrative calendar, used by the Sumerians alongside a lunar calendar of 354 days, requiring a mathematical reconciliation that implies prior knowledge of both cycles. And the Great Temple of Inanna at Uruk, the Eanna precinct, is oriented to the rising of Venus at an azimuthal angle, achievable only by someone who has tracked the planet's 584-day synodic cycle across multiple years. The official explanation is that this knowledge accumulated through generations of careful observation. This is reasonable, except for one detail: there is no record of the accumulation. No tablets showing the early mistakes. No corrections, no intermediate calculations. The Sumerians recorded everything: tax assessments, legal disputes, lamentations, love songs, inventories of fish. They did not record the process by which they learned to align temples to planetary cycles, because the tradition held that the process was not theirs. It was given. And here is what I keep returning to. It is not any single city. It is what happens when you look at all of them simultaneously. Eridu receives the knowledge first, according to the texts. The ME passed directly from Enki, but Uruk, approximately 70 kilometers to the north, develops the same foundational mathematics and the same temple orientation methodology within a window so narrow that archaeologists cannot determine which city preceded the other. Nippur, the sacred center of Sumerian religious life, appears with the same corpus of astronomical knowledge and the same architectural conventions. Lagash, to the southeast, follows the same pattern. 4 cities, the same knowledge, no clear origin point, no documented path of transmission between them, not one city learning from another, the same source reaching all of them at once. I was not prepared for that. I had expected a sequence. What the record shows is a simultaneous arrival, then silence about where it came from. The excavation at Tel Abu Shahrain, the modern site name for ancient Eridu, concluded in 1949. Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd published their preliminary findings through the Iraqi Directorate General of Antiquities, and the tablet corpus recovered from the site was divided between the Iraq Museum in Baghdad and collaborating institutions. Most of the tablets were administrative, grain records, temple inventories, lists of offerings, standard material for a city of Eridu's age and function. One tablet was not standard. It was recovered from the lowest accessible stratum of the temple precinct, the layer closest to the original structure. The clay was degraded along one edge, obscuring several lines of text. What remained was partially transliterated in the 1970s by a team working from photographs, and the translation contains a construction with no known parallel in the Cuneiform record. A first-person voice identifying itself as one who descended, stating that it is the last of those who came, and addressing what follows as a final account. Scholars who examined it classified the anomaly as a literary device, a scribal convention of speaking in the voice of a mythological figure, a genre with some precedent in later Babylonian literature. This interpretation is reasonable. It accounts for the evidence, except for one word in the third surviving line. That word does not appear in any other context in the cuneiform corpus before or after this tablet, and it carries a semantic range most closely translated as, "I am ending." The surviving portion of the tablet contains 4 legible sections. The first instructs that what is being set down must not be altered, that the measurements, the laws, and the cycles of the heavens are complete as given, and are not to be added to or subtracted from. The phrasing of the prohibition is unusual. It does not say, "Do not alter the words of the king." It says, "Do not alter what I have left, because there will be no one to correct what you change." The second section references a coming water, not as prophecy but as schedule, in the same grammatical construction the Sumerians used for the next harvest, the next flood of the Tigris, the next conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. The one who writes does not say the water will come. It says the water comes in the time after I am gone. The third section is the most damaged. What survives contains the word for teaching, the word for completion, and one sentence scholars have not been able to place within any known genre of cuneiform literature. I am the last. What I leave is all there will be. The fourth section instructs that the tablet itself be placed at the foundation. Scholars have offered three interpretations of this document. Each one is plausible. The first is a scribal forgery in archaic style, composed to lend authority to the temple's ancient claim. The second is a genuine early tablet, whose first-person voice is a conventional literary attribution to a divine figure. The third says the translation is partially incorrect, and the anomalous phrases reflect a misreading of damaged text. Each step is reasonable on its own. Together they form something harder to dismiss. Three scholars, one object, three different accounts of what it says. There had to have been a scribe in every generation that followed. Someone sat in the temple precinct at Eridu with fresh clay and a reed stylus, copying text in a language that had already stopped being spoken in the streets outside. They pressed signs into wet clay whose meaning they could reconstruct, but whose origin no one in the room remembered. They copied the measurements, the astronomical records, and the prohibition, "Do not alter what I have left." They did all of this because the instruction to do so was older than the institution that gave it, and because no one who had ever been in that room had thought to ask why. What those scribes copied still exists. The King List names the 7 sages, the Uruk list assigns them to kings, the Atrahasis epic records the flood that ended the age they taught in, and the Eridu corpus, tablets divided between the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, the British Museum in London, the Penn Museum in Philadelphia, and the Oriental Institute in Chicago, contains records that have been catalogued, partially digitized, and only partly translated. The remainder sits in storage, tablets whose surfaces are too damaged, whose dialect is too archaic, or whose content does not fit the standard categories of administrative or literary text. No one has gone through all of them looking for the things that do not fit. No one has read the full corpus searching for passages that contradict the official record. The archive has been available since 1949. The clay has been waiting far longer than that. It does not forget. It never has.